Super Mario 64 is a classic game developed by Nintendo and was released as a launch title to the Nintendo 64. It was their first attempt at taking Mario into the 3D space. No. I'm not going to do this. I don't need to give a history lesson on what Mario 64 is. You know what it is. Everyone does. Mario 64 is a launch title for the N64. Really? I thought it was for the Xbox. Get in there. Let's just skip to why I'm making this review. If you think about it, it's pointless. A point of a review is not only to inform people on their purchases, but also use an opportunity for people who create the games to make improvements on their next project. But, like, Nintendo has already learned from Mario 64 and has made much more polished games. They clearly know what they're doing. They don't need Mr. Pretends to Know More to tell them how to improve. Secondly, everyone and their grandma has already owned or played Mario 64 at one point, so you don't need my help to decide whether this game is for you. So, why am I making this review? Well, to be frank, I just kind of feel like it. I think Mario 64 is a very interesting game to talk about. Alright, I've wasted enough time. I don't want the viewing of this video to be one of your regrets when you're lying on your deathbed, so let's just quickly get to the point of why you're watching this. The game starts up with Princess Peach inviting us to the castle for some cake. Okay, quick side tangent. But what exactly is Peach's position of power here in the Mushroom Kingdom? Is she their leader? If she is, then why is she not Queen Peach? And if she's still a princess, then where's the king? We saw him in Mario 3, but he's never showed up after that, so I guess he just died. So I guess that would make Peach the leader, but we never see her do any royal duties. So someone else has to be. But who? Is it Toadsworth? Well, it can't be him because he got, like, assassinated. Maybe there really is no leader of the Mushroom Kingdom, and it just lives in anarchy as Princess Peach lives comfortably in her castle. Anyway, after we see the message, Mario shows up and we start off in this huge open area. There's a lot of stuff to play around, like there's trees to climb and jump off of, there's this small patch of water over here that you can swim around and drown Mario in, and it's fun. When I first played this area, I thought that it was a little dull, to be honest. The open section really serves no purpose, with a couple of exceptions. And there's really no secrets to find, but it's important to remember the time period that this game came out, and the thought process behind it. Before this, 3D hasn't been invented yet, so to ease people into the newfound power of walking in 360 degrees, and also get used to holding this monstrosity, it looks like a controller with a goatee. They had a very large area that a young kid could probably spend hours jumping around and getting used to the new ways of playing the game, so even though nowadays it's not really necessary, I understand why it's here. Since we're on the topic of controls, we should probably talk about them. Mario 64 is interesting because unlike previous Mario games, where Mario just has like one basic jump, here you have a variety of different moves. The regular jump, double jump, triple jump, side somersault, the backflip, the long jump, and the wall jump. It gives Mario a vast utility that not only is fun to play around in, but makes traversing the worlds much more interesting and easy. You see something in the distance? Use a long jump. A platform a little too high? Use the backflip. Need something really high up? Well, you got a wall jump for that. The worlds are designed so not only you can explore, but explore in your own way. The game doesn't really restrict or punish you for going off the beaten path. It's immensely rewarding pulling off these moves and getting to where you want, which is exactly what this game is looking for. The one thing about the controls though is that while they're very versatile, they're also very loose. Mario's quite on the heavy side and he does not control particularly well at all in the air, which makes correcting jumps and doing precise platforming can be quite the struggle. Now, for the beginning of the game, this really isn't an issue, since most of the game just focuses on exploration over obstacle-based platforming. But as the game goes on, it decides to lean in more on the platforming side of things. Now, this isn't necessarily a problem since most of it is built with this kind of control in mind, but there are some stages late into the game that do require you to be precise, and since the controls weren't made for that, it makes going through stages like Tiny Huge Island a huge just pain. When the island is small, you have to be very careful because you can easily fall off. I think that's why I always found myself disliking the controls by the end of the game. They're not bad, they're quite good even, but mostly for exploration and when the platforming is properly designed. But unfortunately later stages like to really go into the more precise platforming side of things. So it just makes the controls more frustrating by the end of it, even though they're not necessarily bad, which, just kind of makes me sad. Anyway, let's head to the castle. Peach's castle is basically one giant elaborate level select. You see, you must enter each level through these portals, and the castle is huge. There are a lot of secrets that you can find, which really plays to the whole exploration aspect of the game. I do wish we could pick the stages from a menu, but that's just a minor gripe. When playing, I was never really bothered having to travel around to get to the levels. It's also easy to remember where each stage is, since the castle is designed where each floor is distinct, so you'll always know where they are. And they're never too overly obtuse to find. Even the hidden ones are easy to get to once you know where they are. The only complaint I have is I wish the castle felt more lively. We have all these toads, but they're kind of just stuffed in these corners and they don't really say anything interesting. It's like, hey Mario, do you know how to jump? Hey Mario, have you explored the castle thoroughly? Hey Mario, did you get your prostate checked? You know, like very basic stuff. In Ocarina of Time, you had this town and it had a bunch of different people and they all had something to say. It was very lively and nice. Wish it was more like that. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and dive headfirst into the painting and talk about Bomb-omb Battlefield, because this stage is fantastic. Like, seriously, it's one of the most well thought out and well designed levels, just not in this game, but any game. It does so much right that I in fact want to dedicate an entire part of this video talking about this level exclusively and looking at every aspect of it. So, I hope you like this song, because we will be here for a while. So this level starts off with you being informed that the Bomb-ombs are at war with each other, and they ask for your help to stop King Bomb-omb. Very interesting choice on Nintendo's part to make the first level a literal war zone, but hey. The first enemy you encounter is a Goomba. Now, since Mario is now in the third dimension, jumping on these courts with feet is a challenge. So they added this new move called the Punch, so you can fight them like a real Italian plumber. You can take enemies out multiple ways in this game, jumping, punching, diving, ground pound, and so on. It makes Mario very versatile, and he's never truly defenseless against a foe. The second enemy you encounter is these Bomb-ombs. They're a great enemy because they're one of the few ones that don't hurt you on impact, so it gives the player a chance to get away or take it out. It also teaches you how to pick up objects, since, anyone's first instinct when they see a bomb is to punch it. And since punching and picking things up are the same button, the player will be taught about this mechanic. Not only that, but picking up objects will play an important role later, not only in this level, but in the whole game. So teaching the player early on that they can do this is important. That's probably why they just littered this area with Bomb-ombs, to give the player multiple chances to learn this move. Before moving on, I should mention that there's these signs everywhere telling the player how to do certain actions, which may seem a little too direct and in your face, but hey, like I said, this is the first time kids were probably experienced in the 3Ds, so literally spelling it out for them made sense. I do wish they felt a bit more natural though. Like in the context of the world, who's putting these signs here going, hey, press the B button to pick up a box? I think it would have been cool if it was written as if King Bomb-omb wrote it and telling his soldiers useful info. I mean, it would still be a little weird, like could you imagine fighting in a war and there's just signs everywhere reminding you how to fire your gun, but I think it would have been nice. Anyway, back to this area. It's great because it's made to look very eye-catching. There's enemies in the way, and the camera is facing it when you enter the level. It's much larger than the intended path, so most players probably went down there first to find enemies and, interestingly enough, a dead end. You'll see a button, a psychedelic on the other side with no way to get to it, which forces the player to go back and find another way to get to the goodies. This is a great way to tell the player that this level isn't just from point A to point B, and is encouraging exploration, which helps cement this new Mario in these players' heads. And that's all just from this one area here. There's plenty more incentives for the player to explore. When you go up this ramp, you're greeted with a large landscape, and you could go look around in it. There's coins, a mushroom, a hill that has something that you can't enter yet. After that section, you go over here and you see a star in the cage. Now, a first-time player isn't going to know how to get to this star, so they just pass it, and they will encounter these pulls, in which they will be taught that they can ground pound. Once they learn that, they can make the connection that the pole the chain chomp is attached to can also be butt stomped, so they'll go back, ass smack it, and then get the star. Once they do and jump back into the level, they will discover that it actually wasn't the star they originally selected. The developers made it so that the first star many people will see or encounter is the last star in the mission select lineup, so a player will see each level has 6 regular stars to collect. Now on a second playthrough of this level, most players might go around and explore more carefully to see if they can find other stars. And many of them probably will, such as the 8 red coin star or the 100 coin mission. Now after this section, you have this mountain that you must scale up. A small thing I like about this mountain is this little teleportation section here. They're scattered all over the place and fairly well hidden, but what makes this one so clever is that it's the first one many people will encounter because it's placed in such an obvious spot. Here in the wall where King Bomb-omb's very large and metallic balls are coming out of, and since many people will, want to check it out, they'll be teleported to the top. After making it to the top, King Bomb-omb will face you, and this is where the smaller Bomb-ombs come into play, since defeating him uses the same method of defeating the smaller Bomb-ombs, picking them up and throwing them. And just in case you didn't learn about picking up Bomb-ombs, King Bomb-omb will literally tell you because he is inept. Well, after you beat him and get the first star, now these Bomb-omb buddies will let you use their war cannons to fire yourself across the map, which is really cool. They put one right at the start too, so you can just jump right into it and blast off anywhere in the level, making traveling a lot easier. You can also now face Coop with a quick, which teaches the player that some stars are locked behind other stars. Now, you maybe think to yourself, wow, this whole Bomb-omb Battlefield analysis is a little scattered, and yeah, it kind of is. It's kind of hard to talk about Bomb-omb Battlefield in a coherent way since the level itself is all over the place. And I don't mean that as a negative in any way. It intentionally puts stuff out of order, like encountering the last star first, learning about the poles after you pass the one the chain chomp is attached to, the one-up mushroom behind the dead end. It's all done to get the player to explore, because that's the ultimate main point of Mario 64, exploring. Every Mario game before this point has been just about getting to the end, so this drastic change in level progression was handled by putting everything all over the place. And they didn't just put them randomly, they carefully thought about how the player will traverse the levels and put multiple points to purposefully lead the player off the beaten path and do their own thing. This is further emphasized in the overall game, in that you don't need to collect every star. In fact, once you collect your first star, an entire new level opens up, and if you really wanted to, you could just abandon Bomb-omb Battlefield in its entirety and check out this new level. You can go from level to level collecting any star in any order, and if you don't like a certain mission, you don't have to do it. Just go somewhere else. This is the biggest part of Mario 64's identity and why people like it so much, and it's great that this game gives you so much freedom in how to approach things, and a Bomb-omb Battlefield is constructed in the perfect way to emphasize that. There's only one minor complaint I have with the level, and I wish there was more coins in it. Just like litter the place with it so players will more naturally come across the 100-star coin. Filling a level with coins is a piece of advice that most of these levels and also my wallet could take, but whatever. Now that Bomb-omb Battlefield is out of the way, I want to give a little attention to each of the other levels. Now, I'm not going to go in nearly as much detail with these ones because I don't want anyone watching this review to die of old age before making it to the end. But I'll still talk about certain unique aspects of each stage and what they do to differentiate themselves from each other level. Next up is Whomps Fortress. The first thing you'll immediately notice is that it's much more dangerous because now you can fall into the endless void of Mario's empty heart, and also off the cliff. In Bomb-omb Battlefield, you could really only die by getting hit enough times, so in Whomps Fortress, they introduced the first insta-death way to die, which is emphasized since one of the first things you see in the levels is these wall creatures that push you off the edge because they're jerks, and these floors that can pull out from under you. It's really dangerous. There's also now these enemies that can crush you and takes like a third of your health, which further shows the increased challenge. Aside from that though, this level isn't much different from Bomb-omb Battlefield. There's multiple ways you can go, and you can collect the stars out of order. There are enemies that act similar to the final boss, so it teaches you how to beat them. And when you do, the world slightly changes, presenting more opportunities. It's another great level, my personal favorite in fact, but I already talked most about this stuff in Bomb-omb Battlefield, so let's go ahead and move on to Jolly Roger Bay. Here we have our first water level, and it's great. I guess since we're here, we probably should talk about the water controls. Mario swims forward when you hit the A button and you can steer him in any direction. They're surprisingly fluid for being the first Mario 3D platformer. In fact, the game that came after this, Mario Sunshine, actually has worse water controls. My only complaint is that Mario's a bit too slow, and when you're traveling across a large pool of water, it can kind of get aggravating. Although it can be pretty thrilling when you're close to drowning and you're trying to get to the top and just barely making it with a sliver of health. It's rewarding. Since the swimming controls work really well, that also means Jolly Roger Bay in of itself is really fun to play through. It gives new ways of exploring and unique challenges that a standard level doesn't usually offer, like chasing this eel with a star following it. Since your health meter and the air meter are also one and the same, but it can also make for some pretty exciting and intense challenges. There are still a couple of odd design choices in this level though, like this section over here. This is a huge area, it has giant pillars trying to crush you and these Goombas who give you a spook, but it's really only used for this one star and some blue coins. Seems like kind of a waste. Another thing is that this stage has two stars that are almost identical, where you have to open these chests in the right order. Now, reusing missions isn't inherently a bad idea, but I just find it weird that they're in the same level. One more thing to mention is that there's these invisible blocks here. You see, some stars require special powers that you can only unlock later in the game. There are 3 of them: wing cap, metal cap, and invisible cap. And they're quite well hidden too, you have to think outside of the box to access them. While these power-ups are really cool and can lead to unique challenges, I feel like they're underutilized. Like, I could probably count the required caps for stars on my one hand. It's not that big of an issue, but I thought I'd bring it up. Well, the next stage is Cool Cool Mountain, and I just want to say, I'm only realizing this now as I'm writing the script, but this level is not called Cool Cool Mountain, it's called Cool Cool Mountain. Like, the first cool is like, hey, that's cool, as in awesome. And the second cool is like, literally cool, like it's cold. Like a fridge. So it's Cool Cool Mountain. Cool Cool Mountain. This level starts you off the top of the mountain, and you can make your way down by either going through this chimney like Santa Claus. Mario is red and fat. He just needs the beard. Down this slide or just off the side of the cliff if you're really daring. It's a pretty okay level. The slide section is really fun. You have these coins that lined up here to help you find a secret. My only real complaint is this mission right here. Wall kicks will work. What the heck is that supposed to mean, wall kicks will work? Well, I hope so. You're the one who programmed the game. Why are you telling me this? Yeah, some of these star mission names, they're kind of crap. They're supposed to be like hints so the player can look for something that the level title specifies. Like the eel would like to come out to play. Okay, probably has to do with something with the eel. Star on the flying island? Most likely has to do with the giant flying island. Now, what is wall kicks will work supposed to tell me? That the programmers are confident in their abilities to make functional controls? Nothing! It tells me nothing. It doesn't help that the star's tucked away in the corner here and can be accessed by cannon, which if you miss, you'll fall off the stage and have to start all over again. It's terrible. There are a couple more terrible mission names, but this is the one that stuck out the most to me. Aside from that, though, it's a pretty standard level. Travel down the mountain, which is fun. So let's move on to the next stage, Big Boo's Haunt. Before talking about the stage, I actually want to delve into how to enter it first. You have to go back here, which I presume is Princess Peach's secret graveyard, because how else would you explain all these ghosts? Well, you have to football tackle this one to get access to the level. It's really weird because it's the only one that's like this. Even some of the other hidden or unorthodox levels have you jumping through a portal of some kind. This one seems more like you'd find in one of the castle's secret stars, but I guess it's not that hard to find either since the boo sticks out like a sore thumb, so maybe I'm just overthinking it. Anyway, Big Boo's Haunt is really cool. It's structured in a much more compact way compared to the rest of the stages, and after you get the first star, the whole house is immediately explorable. What I like is that there's many different unique rooms which have different kind of challenges to overcome. And it's easy not to get lost since all the rooms connect back to like the central hub. I also really like the atmosphere. It's all dark and spooky and the music reflects that really well. It's great. My only complaint is that 3 of the missions are very similar to one another, where you must defeat this giant boo. They're different enough so that they don't feel too similar, but still, three missions where the final goal is the same is, well, it's a little ridiculous. Next up is Hazy Maze Cave. This is not a good level. It's very annoying to travel in. It's quite easy to get lost and to not know where to go, which I know is like kind of the point. It is a maze after all, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating. This whole stage is like if Nintendo made Metroid, but bad. The reason why games like Metroid is fun is because when you explore, you're rewarded with power-ups and upgrades that will help you open new pathways and make traveling easier. But here, there's nothing like that. You just stumble your way through the level until you find a star, in which you get booted back to the same starting point to stumble through the level again. It's just not really that fun to explore, and in a game where that's like the whole point, that's a pretty major problem. Many of the individual missions just aren't that great either. I think the worst one is gathering these 8 red coins. You just stand on this platform, slowly move it along, and if you fall off, you just gotta climb up and do it all over again. It's not fun. The 100 coin mission is probably the worst one in this level. You know, since I brought it up, I'll quickly go over the 100 coin missions in this game. On paper, they sound like a lot of fun. Going around collecting 100 coins to get a star. It doesn't even kick you from the level either, so it can just be like an extra thing you do while you're going for a mission. But the problem is that many of the stages doesn't have nearly enough coins. They're quite scarce, actually. Like, when you reach 80 to 90 coins, you will really start to struggle to find any more, especially in stages like Hazy Maze Cave, where they're so spread out that finding 100 is a pain in the posterior. Like I said earlier, they really should have just littered these stages with coins. This wouldn't have been a problem otherwise. Anyway, the next stage is Bowser's Lethal Lava Land. It's one of my personal favorites, and it's like the complete opposite of Hazy Maze Cave. And that, it was a giant labyrinth. Here, it's literally just a flat square where you can see everything. Quite the drastic change. It's like one day you're trapped in a corn maze, and then the next day you're trapped in a cubicle. with lava. It's a really fun stage. There's like a shell over here that can make you surf across the lava, and if you unlock the wing cap, then you can basically bypass any obstacle, which is a lot of fun. But you could also argue that's like somewhat of a problem. For being a place filled with lava and has an evil atmosphere, this is probably one of the easiest levels in the game. You can just bypass many obstacles. But on the other hand, the shell is somewhat hidden. You have to take a leap of faith to get over to where it is. And I imagine most kids didn't unlock the weed cap yet at this point, so instead of thinking like this level is too easy because of this, it should just be that the game is rewarding me for doing such a good job with exploring. Admittedly though, even without the shell and the wing cap, it still is pretty easy. The lava doesn't insta-kill you, and there's plenty of coins around, so you're not in any real danger. And the actual challenges themselves are also pretty easy. The red coin mission is probably the most underwhelming of any of the stages. They're all just in the same spot over here, so you just go over there, collect them all, and there's your star. There, good job. You did it. 2 of the missions are also, once again, reuse. You gotta bump the bully into the lava, except this one you gotta bump 3 bullies into the lava, and then you bump the big bully into the lava. Ooh, different. But even then, it's still really fun. Yeah, more challenges would be nice, but it's just super cool to like go over and do whatever you want. Like, I could travel across these platforms, or I could just butt burn my way over here, collect some coins, and then beat up this guy. That's really funny. Since the stage is a flat square, you're kind of free to do whatever you want. It's really cool. I like it a lot. Anyway, the next stage is Shifting Sandlands. This level is weird. So you have this area out here. It's designed like any other level, but what makes it different is the pyramid in the center acts like its own level when you enter it. So it's like a level inside a level. The thing about the pyramid is that it almost seems like it was designed to be kind of like a Zelda dungeon. To access the top to get to the boss, you have to stand on these 4 pillars, and the inside kind of has elements that fit right at home in a Zelda game, like the sand slide segment. The boss feels like it's right out of Zelda as well. I heard that 64 and Ocarina were developed around the same time, so they influenced each other in a lot of ways, and you can really feel it here, along with another one later in the game. But despite this, it's still really fun, since the main focus still is about you getting past obstacles with Mario's moveset. It's just the way you go about it requires a little bit more thought. I like it. The biggest problem with this level though is that inside the pyramid there's these 2 stars that are quite high up, and to get to them you have to The only real problem with this stage is that 2 of the stars are fairly high up, and to get them you have to reclimb the same obstacles with no differences between them. It's kind of annoying. Unfortunately, this kind of problem isn't exclusive to Shifty Sandlands. In fact, after this, many other stages kind of start going downhill with frustrating design like this that brings down the overall experience, but we'll get there when we get there. The next stage is Dire Dire Docks, which is like Jolly Roger Bay, but worse in like every way. First of all, one of the missions is another open the chest mission, which is like the 3rd time they've reused this by now. But now it's really frustrating because you have these whirlpools sucking you in the whole time. And like I said before, the swimming controls are pretty okay, especially for the time, but they're still, somewhat sluggish, which makes it even more frustrating. It doesn't help that this level is separated in 2 areas, and every time you want to get a star in another section, you have to swim through this tunnel with nothing in it. Look at all this exciting gameplay that's going on right now. Do you not feel the thrill? Another thing is that this level is far too large. In Jolly Roger Bay, there's pretty much just this one giant trench, and the stars took advantage of the unique challenge of being underwater. But here, it's so much larger. And aside from this one mission where you have to follow this shark, none of them really take advantage of the fact that you're underwater in any kind of unique way. It just kind of makes traveling more aggravating. In fact, that's kind of the whole problem with this level. Everything feels slow. Swimming is slow. You have to wait for these pools. To wait for these poles to get the red coin. You have to wait through these rings, and I swear, these rings are broken. Like, I'm clearly going through them. Look, I'm going through the rings. I'm going through it. What is going on? The next stage is Snowman's Land, and I always forget this one is in the game. And no, it's not because I have the memory of a brain-damaged goldfish, it's because this is just another snow stage. It even has the exact same music, so these levels just kind of meld together in my mind. The only thing that stands out to me is climbing the giant snowman and trying to get past him blowing you off the top. So, since I don't really have anything to say about this stage, let's go ahead and talk about the music instead. This music was composed by Koji Kondo, who's been making music for Mario since the original console game. And they're all great, and Mario 64 is no exception. The music is quite varied compared to other games in the series. Like, they always have different types of music, but they usually still fit together in a general style. Here, you have bubbly and happy, atmospheric, calming, threatening. It's all great and fits the tone of many of these stages quite well. The Bomb-omb Battlefield track is my favorite. When you first first enter the level, you hear it and makes you just excited to play the game. And when you enter Big Boo's haunt for the first time and you hear that foreboding track, it makes you feel incredibly uneasy. Hazy Maze Caves remix of the Underground theme is one of my favorites since it's so different from the original, yet you can still recognize it. An interesting thing to note to mention is that the music plays everywhere, in the levels, the menu, the castle, but not the castle grounds, which is interesting. When you first enter the game, it's pure quiet with just chirping birds. I'm not sure why they did this, but my best guess is because they wanted this area to feel as relaxing as possible. You know, since kids are not used to 3D, so the lack of music helps kind of remove any sense of urgency and let people go at their own pace. Or at least that's my theory. The one problem is that there's not a whole lot of music in the game, so it tends to reuse tracks a lot. This wouldn't normally be a problem, but one of those tracks, the one they use for the slide, is used in 2 stages back to back. This song is not meant to be listened to in long periods and can get quite tiring. Like, it's a great song, but I don't want to listen to it 10 minutes straight each mission. It makes my brain go slowly numb. The next stage is Wet Dry World, and out of all the stages in the game, this one feels the most Zelda-like. And to its detriment, unfortunately. The unique mechanic of changing the water level is just not that interesting. You have to run over these orbs and they're pretty spaced out, which means a lot of pointless back and forth just so you can get easier access to certain stars.
There's also a star that requires you to find these 5 specific points, and none of them are really that obvious.
So you catch yourself running around a world that's just not fun to travel in, looking for these spots. There's also this lost city, which isn't much better. The camera is probably the worst in this section, since it's so cramped. Overall, it's not bad. In fact, if you know which mission you want to go for, you can jump at a certain point in the painting and you can set the water level depending on which point you entered. So you can make it where it's the preferable choice to make the mission easier. Despite that though, this stage is just kind of boring. Next up is Tall Tall Mountain, one of my least favorite stages in the whole game. Firstly, it's almost completely linear, with a few diverging paths. That means every time you enter the level, you must go through the same moments numerous times with no changes in between. And not to mention, if you fall from a high point, you just gotta reclimb the mountain again. It's super infuriating. It really does seem like this point of the game it's kind of just gone in a downward spiral. The last few stages have been either mediocre, boring, or just straight up bad. The next stage is Tick-Tock Clock, which kind of encompasses all the previous problems into one stage. You have to start from the beginning with each mission, more focused on precise platforming, very little in exploration. It's just not that great, but there are some things going for it. Like, I think the setting is actually pretty interesting, and the actual missions themselves are a lot more varied than something like Tall Tall Mountain. And while precise platforming isn't necessarily this game's forte, at least going through some of Tick-Tock Clock's unique obstacles can be somewhat fun if you have a handle on the controls by this point. If you enter the stage with the hands pointing at a certain number, you can also change how the gears move, which makes replaying the stage a little less tedious. Although you do run into an issue where some stars require parts of the clock moving, so if you enter at the time where everything is frozen, that star is inaccessible, which seems kind of like a design oversight to me. And finally, we have Rainbow Ride. This level is kind of like the complete opposite of Bomb-omb Battlefield. This level is one giant bottomless pit with a bunch of different obstacle-based challenges, and instead of exploring, you have to ride these carpets on a predetermined path. And these carpets are quite slow. You're just standing around, occasionally dodging things until you reach your stop. It's like riding a public bus. It's just a drag to get anywhere, because 4 of these stars absolutely require you to ride the carpets. And 2 of those stars are right next to each other, so you don't even do anything different to get to it. You just turn left instead of right once you reach the ship. They obviously designed this level to be like immensely challenging, you know, it's very wide open. There is a lot of like do or die segments, but it's just really frustrating to get to any of those points. It's not fun to travel in. It's really disappointing since it is the final regular stage. After this, it's the Bowser level and fight. So this stage will most likely be the last one many players will experience, which might leave somewhat of a sour taste in their mouth. Oh well. Those are all the main stages out of the way. So for the final part, let's go through like the Bowser ones. The unique thing about the Bowser stages is that they're completely linear. It's about a series of platforming challenges that you must get through to get to the end, and they're pretty good. It's a nice change of pace from the rest of the game. They're like a precursor to Mario 3D Land or World. Now, you do run into the same problem as many of the linear worlds in the later game like Tall Tall Mountain and Tick-Tock Clock, but I feel like the biggest difference is that this stage, you only have to really go through it once.
There's no 6 different times with no changes or anything like that. Secondly, the platforming in these stages I feel like are much more aware of the loose controls. You don't have to be near as precise in any of these stages as I feel you have to be with like Tick-Tock Clock or Rainbow Ride. I still think the platforming in these stages aren't the best, but at least they're designed in a way that's not frustrating. The biggest complaint that I do have with these stages though is the 8 red coin missions. Since they weren't really designed for exploration, the red coins are either hidden in the most obvious spots or the most bullcrap places. They feel quite tacked on. The Bowser fights though, they're also quite underwhelming. It's really clever how they expanded on the King Bomb-omb idea, where you have to grab the behind Bowser and then toss him. But unfortunately, like the first 2 battles you fight Bowser, you just have to hit him once and he's dead. And in the final battle, you have to hit him 3 times. Exciting. I know. But in the end of the day, it's still just the same fight, which makes the ending feel immensely underwhelming. I can understand the N64 wasn't the most powerful thing in the world, but I feel like adding like one final segment after you beat Bowser at the end would have really helped leave more of an impact. Well, we looked at every aspect of the game, so let's go ahead and collect our thoughts and give a final overall conclusion to this mess of a review. If we look at the stages, they seem to start strong, but over the course of the game kind of go lower in quality. It's like a straight downward slope. But even then, while I may have problem with those stages, they're not terrible, except for maybe Tall Tall Mountain. It's just in comparison to the masterpieces of the earlier stages, they just don't stack up as well. So I'm gonna be honest, before sitting down and writing this review, I really didn't like this game, like at all. I thought it was frustrating and not really fun to play through. But after sifting through my thoughts and looking at each aspect of the game, I now realize that I misunderstood my own feelings on the game. The game has a lot of great stages that are fantastically designed and really take advantage of the new 3D space, and it just makes it fun to explore. But as the game goes on, as I mentioned, the quality does seem to go down, which is probably why I always saw the game in a much more negative light, because the underwhelming stages would be the last ones I would always experience. Not only that, but I would always force myself to 100% this game every time I played it, which was exhausting and dampened my enjoyment at the end. But the second time around, when I was re-recording footage because I lost the original, I decided just to go after the stars I enjoyed. And when I did, I had a much better time with the game, which I understand isn't a big revelation. If you ignore the stuff you don't like, you'll enjoy the game more. But it did help me find a newfound appreciation for this game that I didn't have before. Now, of course, this doesn't necessarily excuse the not so great design of these stages. If you're gonna make something, you might as well make it good, but still, that's kind of what makes Mario 64 a great game. If you don't want to go after it, you don't have to. You could just ignore it. There are only 70 stars you need out of the 120. So if you really wanted to, I'm sure there's like 5 stages you could 100% ignore. Like, you never even have to enter them to beat the game. You're truly free to tackle this game in any way you want. Another thing to mention is that 3D platforming was new and different, so they wanted to try a little bit of everything. So even though it may not have all worked out and possibly led to a somewhat lesser overall experience if you're going for 100%, that's just the risk you take with experimentation. People may say that's not really an excuse, and I can understand that, but it is important that this game is also 25 years old. Obviously, things weren't going to be figured out, and it's interesting to see the different ideas and the solutions they had for the time. While I don't find myself going back to this game often, I do think it's worth playing through. There's enough good here that experiencing it is 100% worth your time. That's all I really have to say. I know I'm pretty bad at ending off my videos, but I gotta stop somewhere, so might as well be here. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.